can a child who's feeling that they're in a situation that's tough or that needs assistance seek your assistance individually or on their own, or is it always through a referral?
Or it
Of
has to
some
be
sort?
through the emergency room.
No, so they actually have really cool things that are created. Like there's an incentive called NYC Well. And so they have a call in number. It's a mobile crisis center where children can even text in or call in and receive access to services and kind of voice if they're experiencing some type of psychological distress.
Really? What's that called again?
It's called NYC Well. So it's 1-800 NYC Well.
God damn. I feel like yeah, ever heard that?
No, never. No, never. Hold on.
Wow.
So people aren't aware because a lot of people, within the community are very concerned about having psychological assistance or supports. Nobody wants to talk about mental health, right? It's considered taboo. It's considered one of those things where it's like it's uncomfortable. So they want to make it more accessible. So the city came out with an incentive to say, hey, you can always text and or call in some of your concerns, and discreetly we'll send somebody to you within 48 to 72 hours to your home to psychologically assess you on your premises. So people didn't realize like you don't always have to step into the hospital if you feel like it's intimidating. Somebody will come to you and make sure you get the same level of care and treatment.
Right. Now, Celia, did you also get your clients from the hospital, or did they have to find you and go to you?
So I worked in foster care. I was in foster care for almost 2 years. It was a residential, so we had the youth with all sorts of mental health issues residing there. A lot of our kids actually went to some of her hospitals or hospitals in the area.
You share kids.
So,
Right.
so our kids came in from the state, from the Board of Education, from ACS, so they came from different areas. So our kids were already living on campus. Going back to what you said before with the sex trafficking, a lot of our kids, because during COVID, they were stuck in that facility. They used to leave campus. They got caught up in the sex trafficking. It was very difficult for the most part because now we didn't know where our kids went, but we found out through whatever circumstances that they were picked up. They were put to do things that were traumatizing to them. Mind you, these kids were in residential because they already come from traumatizing backgrounds. They have a lot of deep-rooted traumas, abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, different levels of abuse. But yeah, I got my kids because they were placed at the residential. It was a very sad situation for the most part. They definitely went to the hospitals, and they got the services from people like Dayna who were able to assist with them.
Right. And is there like an age, like, is it any age, or is it like a certain level, like only 10 and above? Like, is it?
Actually, my familiarity with working with kids, anyone from the age of 5 and up.
5?
Yes, because,
Wow.
popular to contrast, there are different mental health disorders that can occur within children that may look different in adulthood, right? So a lot of things that people aren't aware about mental health is that there could be a predisposition to certain health issues. For instance, somebody who's bipolar disorder, as a child, it may show up as a mood disorder on record, but it may not reveal itself until the child is into adulthood, that you'll start to see it that way. Or a child is labeled schizoaffective, where they may have experiences where they're seeing or hearing things, but as an adult, it may be full-blown schizophrenia.
What's schizoaffective?
So schizoaffective is kind of like very similar to schizophrenia. A person is having experience where they may be internally preoccupied, where they may talk to themselves or have experiences where they may see figures or different things that are occurring in front of them that we ourselves may not acknowledge is happening.
I can see that happening. Like, kids, like, they play with toys, they talk to themselves, so I can see that happening in, like, 5, 6-year-olds. Like, how in the world are you supposed to know that's going on?
So a part of working with children and large form, especially during therapy, is play therapy and seeing how they interact. Within play with children, you can see them have different levels of conversation. You put 2 dolls in front of a kid, they're going to play out their household. They're going to play out their friendships. They're going to show you what's going on. They're going to tell you what the boogeyman looks like in front of them or what the boogeyman looks like behind the scenes. And they're going to engage you in that way. So it's really asking detailed questions to kids. A lot of kids have imaginary friends, and that's a part of them being explorative and having healthy imaginations. So we receive that. But there's another level of it. When their experience is kind of like, when kids talk about not only am I seeing my imaginary friend, but I'm having full-blown conversations and I'm engaging my imaginary friend in a certain way, right? And if this spans over the course of time and the kid hasn't learned to kind of like sector that relationship, that's when it becomes more of a concern. And that's when we do think about like predisposition, like now what's in the family dynamic. So we do things like genograms where we sit down with families and we talk to them about like what's in mom's side of the family, dad's side of the family. That could eventually be a precursor for this kid to have those experiences ongoing.
We look for the patterns.
Okay.
And what kind of patterns are like the ones you're looking out for? Or like what's like signs that like what are you looking for? What are like
Mental health, substance abuse, any type of abuse. We look for. Sorry.
Want the people to hear you.
Sorry. So we look for substance abuse, any type of abuse.
Like bruises in the same place that after they heal,
So when we're looking at the family dynamic, we're looking for stuff that happened through the generations. Like, let's say your grandfather had issues with drinking. Did your father also have issues with drinking? Now maybe that could lead to you having, or you seen those patterns. You seen your
susceptible to it.
yes. So that's what we're looking for when we look at the genogram. What patterns in the family hierarchy have you seen? A lot of children share all this information. It's interesting to see how even a child as small as 5 can tell you those things. Yes, I seen daddy. Yeah, mommy drinks. Daddy drinks. Grandpa has drunk. I seen mommy hitting dad. I seen dad hitting mom. I seen grandpa yelling at grandma. Those conversations with those kids are very telling.
Right, because I was gonna ask, like they don't. Most of these kids, I'm sure, don't come with a documented rap sheet of it's you're getting it through the conversations with them, with the play therapy, with the art therapy, where you're getting them to draw or things like that. Talk about what, I've seen things where they say draw your family, and like depending on the size of who they draw, their family members, it's kind of like who is the authority. If they draw someone that's like red or whatever colors, they got like for devil horns or something. It's like, okay, that's how you visualizing these people in your family. Yeah. That's it may not be as accurate as that, but I'm saying just as an example.
Nah, but like my son drew he's 4, he's about to be 5 in July, but he drew a picture of his family, like me, mom, his little brother, and him, and he was the biggest one.
nice.
We was all
about giant.
and we was all little ones under him, and but he drew himself like he was like half the page, had a whole body and everything. And we was like some little stick figures in the corner. So he runs my house. Is that's what he's saying?
Yes.
He said he see himself as the man of the house.
Okay. All right.
I like it.
All right.
It's very informative in that way to think that you could look at a child's drawing and you can, come to so many conclusions based off of what they're putting in the images. And like you said, just the amount of like size and stature. If they put somebody on the outside of the house, that's a testament to how they feel about that too. If they feel like that's received, or if they're on the outside of the house and the whole family's inside, it tells you how that child sees themselves in comparison to their, their relatives.
That's so interesting.
And also the colors. You have to pay attention to the colors the kids use when they're drawing a picture. Each color could mean something very different. Red is always associated with anger. Right. And you kind of just have a dialogue with the children, like, oh, why did you choose red? Why was red so important? Why did you choose that color? Why did you draw yourself on the outside of the family? You could have a child who draws a picture of the household and the whole family is on one side of the house and they're just standing on the side. Or you can have, I had a kid who drew the mother all the way on the outside of the house, on the other side of the family. And their pictures were so detailed. You get so much information from those kids, especially in their drawings.
So back to the genogram, like what exactly is it? Like, are you just like, is it the play dialogue or is it?
It's a family tree.
It's a family tree, essentially. Okay. It's a family tree that's really like in depth, right? Where we're using shapes and symbols to attribute to certain conditions or concerns. So it doesn't just have to do with mental health, it also has to do with medical as well. So you can use a circle, a square, or triangle to indicate where within the family these things are more pervasive. So diabetes runs in your family, there's a symbol that you can include in the genogram that show that this many people generations back have diabetes. So that makes it, where I'm working with a 7 or 8 year old child, we're going to have more of a conversation about nutrition, and we're going to talk about health and like what that looks like. How does your family prepare dinner or have meals with one another? And like that, like using that genogram as a precursor to say, this is what it looks like, in broad sense. It's very helpful to the provider, but also to the family as well, because whereas they may not have made these connections, they now have like a whole diagram drawn that we provide to them and that we keep as well to show them that this is what it looks like down the line.
And is a genogram just part of the process of the intake for a new youth client?
Yes. And like people come into therapy for many different reasons. So one of the biggest things that we believe as providers is you meet people where they are. I'm not going to rush you with a genogram. Like the first thing you want to do is may not talk about everybody in your family.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
know you.
like you got to get to know people. You got to see what people are. It's a creative way to have a conversation with families. And I always say every child at every age is not able to have an in-depth conversation about what's going on with them. So it's a good time to invite other people into the conversation. That's when I can say like, hey, like we're going to have mom, dad, grandpa, whoever you feel comfortable with, sit down with us and we're going to do this together. And even within the creation of this document, I'm seeing how you guys interact with each other just by doing this, or what was known or not known to the family by doing it. So it gives us a lot of good feedback.
They can't. That's a structure that you really can't hide anything. You know what I'm saying? Because it naturally plays out. So it even, you can't talk to a parent about their child, because they're gonna be like, oh no, they do this and they do that because they're trying to cover up their own. But when you set it out like that, the kids be snitching. So like unknowingly be like telling on them, like,
It's very hard to beat your kid and go,
throw up that picture. Show me with a smiley face.
And you see that all the time where mama getting at the kid and be like, dang, why my hair so big? Because you always talking about like
Word. Oh, man, that's crazy.
So, do these kids ever get into a situation where they're providing you, get into the situation where they're getting themselves services on their own, or it's always through like a triggering event?
There's kids who come to me all the time, and this is an experience that I have that I always feel like is a very humbling experience. Reality of it is only in mental health, the field of mental health, there's only 7% providers that look like me. Right? So I work in an old boys prep school at this time. I transitioned after the pandemic. When de Blasio was saying that like a lot of kids were in need of service and mental health services, I decided to leave the hospital. I was like, my time there has been served. I want to go into the education system. I want to bridge the gap. A lot of these kids are coming from the schools to me. I want to know what's up. So when I got into the building, I would have little boys approach me and they go, I have never gotten to talk to somebody like you. I've never gotten a chance to sit down and have a conversation with somebody who looks like me. Wow. There's been times where I've been assigned to service providers. There's been times I've been sent to places, but now I have the option of having a conversation with somebody who looks like me, and they're here for it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's been, like I said, one of those experiences where I said it's very humbling to say that although there's not many of us within the profession, you see growing in numbers, that we have to be in those spaces and places to give the kids the access and the comfortability to go seek help on their own.